Hi, my name's Manu Saluja. I'm an instructor at the New York Academy of Art. This video is created for Certificate of Fine Art students with help with homework number 4. A handout was given with the picture of the sphere on it, and what you'll also need is a toned canvas or canvas panel. This first step is to get the drawing onto the canvas, either by using transfer paper, which would go in between the sheet and the canvas, and then tracing it, or by freehand drawing it, which is what I'm doing here, starting with the sphere and then the shadow border, which separates light from shadow. I then go on to draw the bands that represent the transitions in the light, from darkest light, middle light, to lightest light. So this refers back to the value scale from homework 1. So for example, in color, your 5th value is going to go in halftone. 3rd value is going to be used for the shadow. Value 10, or white, is going to be for the highlight. You'll use value 9 for the effect area around the highlight. And then values 8, 7, and 6 get placed in the remaining concentric circles as they head towards halftone. Value 4 is going to be in reflected light. And of course, we're going to be doing all of this in color. I'm going to mix out the flesh tones next. And last but not least, the value 1 is going to go in cast shadow. The background, by the way, is going to be value 5. So the last step here, I'm just going to draw in the cast shadow shape, and then we're going to get started mixing out the values in color. So what I have here is the palette with the gray string, the yellow string, and the red string mixed from values 9 to 1. And I've already mixed out 9 and 8, and I'm just showing you how to mix out 7. So taking a little bit of yellow and red, and then if need be, a gray. Just a reminder that the gray pile at the same value is only used if you feel that the flesh is too chromatic. Being that this is a conceptual project, you're not looking at a model, feel free to make a skin tone that's up to you, whether it's more yellow, red, or purple. One of the guidelines that was offered in the homework was to make the halftone cooler than the light. That's what I'm mixing right now at 5th value. And the way I suggest doing that, if you're using the controlled palette, is to mix yellow and gray at 5th value and include very, very little of the cadmium string. And you'll see on the palette there's this cooler effect of that 5th value. And then what I'm going to do is begin mixing the shadow values and the reflected light values at a warmer temperature. So there's this altering between warm and cool. Highlights are cool. The lights that are 8, 7, and 6 are warm. Halftone is cool. And then the shadows are warm again. Another way to make the halftone cool, if you wish, is to use either cerulean blue, which I have on my palette right now mixed with the yellow string, or the green. So what I'm going to start with is the shadow. So at 3rd value, you'll see here I'm blocking in the shadow into the shape that is on the right-hand side of the ball, careful to make sure that I bring that shape all the way up to what's called the shadow border. And once that's complete, there should be already a pretty clear sense of a separation of where I'm saying lighter values will exist and where the shadow is. And this is really done in a flat 3rd value that is created that's a bit warmer than halftone. My next step is going to be to block in a thin halftone that goes right up against the shadow border. You can overlap it a little bit, but try to hold on to the drawing of the shadow border. And as you can see, having mixed in more of the gray and the yellow, the halftone is already looking cooler than the shadow. My goal is to use a generous enough amount of paint on the brush that I can complete the halftone in maybe 3 or 4 flowing strokes that go around the sphere. I'm going to next lay in value 6, which you'll see on the canvas is indeed warmer than the halftone. It's going to be a wider band than the halftone. Next comes value 7, next to value 6, getting lighter in value, and also you'll notice that the band, the width, is thicker. Moving on to value 8, it's still a warm tone laid in a concentric circle that is the thickest and widest. I'm also going to use that value 8 to go right up to the edge. So you'll notice that I'm filling it out in kind of an oval shape and then placing value 9 inside of that. And you'll notice that value 9 will look pretty bright, but once I start to work those values and blend those values in between each other, it's going to sort of simmer down and rest. And I should also mention that I'm using different brushes for shadow, halftone, and the lights. And that the ball at this point looks rather much like a mosaic. The bands of light and halftone and shadow are very clear. The edges haven't been blended together just yet. And then lastly, I'm placing a 10th value as the highlight. So once I have the mosaic pattern blocked in, I'm going to take a clean, soft brush and start to work the transitions between the values. This is done by going sort of back and forth with the brush between values and wiping the brush down in between to keep things clean. Right now what I'm doing is tickling the halftone into the shadow to smooth it and blend it, wiping the brush off with paper towel, then making a final few strokes to smooth out the transition. And this may need to be repeated a number of times until you're satisfied, until the sphere looks like it's turning. At times, you'll find for sure that you need to mix between two values. You'll see on the palette right now I'm mixing a bit of the warm 4th value into the halftone value in order to use an additive process with the brushes to create the transition better. And what I mean by an additive process is that rather than just feathering two existing pieces of paint together, I'm adding more paint from the palette onto the ball to help with those smoother transitions. At this stage, I'm going back into the lights with a different blending brush, working 9th value into 8th value. And honestly, this process is repeated as much as it needs to be, some of it blending with the soft brush, some of it going back onto the palette to really create the transition as best you can. In class, we've talked about the illusion of a band or mosaic of value that when next to the light will look dark, and when next to something darker than it will look light. So you may have to mix in between values on your palette to compensate for that. And then once some of those values are adjusted for, you can go back to blending without adding paint. And using paper towels is really important between strokes if you're looking to create this kind of illusionistic turn of the sphere, just to keep things clean. Some of you in your studio practice may end up wanting more of a broken color effect and broken look, but I do think that it's important to at least know how to have in your toolbox how to create more of an illusionistic turn of a sphere. At this point, with a 4th value, I'm putting in the reflected light. I'm choosing to make the reflected light warmer, even warmer than the temperature of the third value shadow. It's up to you whether you want to actually go cooler. If you wanted to use a cerulean blue with a little bit of ultramarine blue and see what that looks like, that's up to you. You may have noticed that up until this point I hadn't put the background in. You're absolutely welcome to do that first. I am using a fifth value gray from the gray string. We've certainly talked in class about the importance of the context of your painting, namely the background values and the effect that they have on your subject matter's value in the light as well as the temperature. So as I put the background in, you can see that the light effect on the ball increases as well as the warmth of the overall light in the sphere starts to increase. I'm using first value to block in the cast shadow, again, just from the gray string. The final stage in the homework is to create what are called edge planes around the ball. This is done preferably using a round soft brush and using values in each area of the ball that are a little bit darker and more neutral than the section that you're painting in, whether it's the light or the shadow. And what this does is, rather than allowing either the shadow or the light to have a hard edge as it meets the background, it gives it a bit of a turn as it angles towards the background, and also helps to soften the edge around the sphere of the ball. So soft edges in outside edges where the subject matter of your painting meets the background helps to create a bit more of an atmospheric look, and is really critical for the final illusion of form for the conceptual ball. And here you have it, a sphere that was created conceptually, both in terms of value and color. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching.